Good evening and welcome to Real World News TV. I'm Chara and Tappin, and joining me this evening is my co-host and cohort in crime, Reggie Kearney. How are you this evening, Reggie?
Hey, Sharon, how you doing this evening? I'm doing okay.
I'm all right, although I'm in the middle of this yawning spell, so forgive me in advance because I feel a monster yawn coming on and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So tonight we thought we would try to cover three different topics. There's a lot going on in the news over the last week. Obviously, we can't cover it all, but we're going to try to get to an update on the Brian Laundrie situation, holding Barr accountable and the notion of executive privilege. And then lastly, if time allows, we'll talk about the Facebook and its use of algorithms. So we know on, I think it was October 19th, they found Brian Laundrie's body. Now, there are already a lot of conspiracy theorists out there who think that um, being underwater in that climate wasn't enough for the body to be completely um, decomposed, such that they could only recognize him through dental records. A lot of people are suggesting that the family helped him escape. Who knows? But it's unfortunate that we never got to hear from him what happened. If he would have allocated and admitted and confessed to having done anything. Did he go out there and commit suicide? Was he dragged out there by Petito's family for justice? How did this happen? So we still have to wait for the FBI to give their results and the coroner to give their results. Have you heard anything else about that?
No, I haven't. I always thought and suspected that he would punk out. He would figure a way to get out of his zone because they said that they had to identify his skeletal remains. So I think after his last encounter with his parents and he didn't come back home with them, I think that was the opportunity he took. And then I also got to realize that part of the park was underwater when they first went out to try to find his body. And I guess since over the last couple of weeks, the water has subsided, so it was easy to find. And I think his parents knew somewhere exactly where he was. They had
Mm-hmm.
an idea of feeling where he was, his location and stuff. So um, I just think, I think it is what it is. Uh, Instead of facing the music, he took the easy way out.
Or someone took him out as retribution. But what I immediately envisioned was them saying, look, we will help you get out, but you are not staying home and getting arrested because we will not put you out on bond and mortgage your house.
Hmm.
We worked too hard for that. But at the end of the day, it's all supposition. We just won't know
Yeah,
until we learn more,
yeah.
or we get
But
pictures of him in another country, like we did with that fella who choked a girl and killed her in Central Park years ago. I can't remember his name,
Mhm.
but he had left the country for a little while and then eventually came back. So, we'll see. But one interesting thing is that the FBI did say that they found a notebook which supposedly belonged to him and that they think that it might be salvageable. So we'll see if there's a letter in there.
I doubt it.
Hmm.
I doubt it. I think he just pumped out.
Well, abusers rarely have the courage of their convictions. They can
Hmm.
bully, but they can't take it, let alone accountability.
Yeah.
But speaking of bullies and holding people accountable, you saw that the House of Representatives voted to hold Trump's administrative advisor, Steve Bannon, in contempt of Congress.
Yeah, I saw it, but it's still up to the AG to determine if there's enough evidence from Congress to warrant his arrest. You know,
Well, I mean, he's in contempt of court. Can't they arrest him on that alone?
well, almost like it's two parts to the whole story. It's the congressional part, and now it's the AG part. Before they go arrest him, they just can't walk up to his house and arrest him. They have to make sure that everything is in order
Hmm.
because go to court, the judge might release him. So that's what they got to do. But I think Steve, he's the kind of guy he'll take a hit for Trump. Just not to have to talk about it. Because Even if they arrest him, all he's going to do is go there and plead fifth.
But you
Okay.
know what's ridiculous is that, well, of course he can always fall back on that. But if they can get access to his records and his communications, I mean, by his own mouth, his own admission during his podcast, he admitted that there were a number of meetings
Mm-hmm.
in advance of the meeting of the insurrection, and that I think during one of his podcasts he said all hell is about to break loose. We're coming in right over the target. So out of the gate, there was this sort of militarized attack mode mentality with the language that he was using to describe what was going to happen. And that language was not, we've got a million tourists coming to the site. That language was not, we have a million man march that's going to stand out there and have our voices heard. It was aggressive and attack oriented language. Um, and again, when I worked in government, as I'm sure you're aware in your position, the mere implication of impropriety can get you fired or um, some type of punishment or ramifications.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this smells like a duck, quacks like a duck, shits like a duck. I don't care if it has feathers or not. It's a duck.
But yeah, the underlings can always get fired for breathing wrong or using too much toilet paper.
Mm.
But the whole thing is, I think I put a lot of the onus on Biden and his AG because they can squash this whole thing without having to even go through Congress to get it squashed. I think it just shows how much the office of the presidency is respected and valued, and no one wants to bring down a previous president to the level where he should be in an orange jumpsuit. And
But
so, and you got to understand something else. The orange head has always been one who has played against time. Pelosi said this has, they want to wrap this up by the end of the year. Well, if he can stall and stay in court to the end of the year, then nothing's going to happen. And he knows that. And
what amazes me, though, is like you said, I understand that no one wants to be responsible for taking down a former president. I mean, I understand the words coming out of your mouth. I don't necessarily understand the sentiment when it is so clearly deserved. But what boggles my mind is the clear and obvious short-sightedness of the Republicans who voted against holding Bannon in contempt, because there's a separation of powers for a reason, and they have subpoena powers for a reason. And if they water this down and basically say, you know what, any average Joe Schmo can say, no, I'm not responding to that subpoena, then what's the point of having that power to begin with? Where's your water?
Well,
you didn't bring your water with you today?
Yeah, I got it. But I mean, it stinks. I mean, the whole thing stinks because nobody wants to take responsibility for getting down and getting dirty. Because I mean, let's face it, Congress is not going to come up with anything concerning January 6th. We all know, the public knows that you had to have planning meetings to get this thing done. Okay, we all know that. We all know there was a reason Roger Stone was in town. That the leader of the po' boys or whatever they call themselves was in town. All those guys were meeting together. What it was, the outcome didn't come out and turn out like they wanted to. Even though the Orange Head fired everybody over in the Department of Defense, it still didn't come out into play like it was going to come out because the Joint Chief of Staff said, look, we're not going to support an insurrection. We're not going to take over the government for you. We're not going to back you if you decide to stay at the White House. The Secret Service was ready to drag his butt out on January 20th. So the things that they wanted didn't fall into place. So now it's like, oh, we didn't do that. We were just making some harmless conversation.
I mean, it's just all so farcical and ridiculous. Clearly, he was there under a tent the day of, giggling with glee and joy, watching at the hot mess that he created. Clearly, Roger Stone was there, instigating things. Clearly, Bannon, and I think that there's an abundance of evidence to support this. The question is whether or not people are going to accept it, just like there was an abundance of evidence in the Mueller report and the Mueller report. But for some inexplicable reason, we knew that that administration was not going to hold Trump accountable. And unfortunate now that he has packed the Supreme Court and packed a lot of the judge positions in the country while he was there. I'm hard pressed to think that we're going to have a turnaround and have people have a come to Jesus moment. You know, the vote largely fell on party lines, 229 for and 202 against. But what was interesting was that 2 of the 9 Republicans who voted with the Democrats did not vote to impeach Trump earlier in the year. And then several Republicans who did vote to impeach Trump did not back the effort to hold Bannon in contempt. So there's some really weird things going on in Congress right now. Their compass, it's like somebody put a magnet on their compass and it's just going like this.
Well, we need this hearing to play out and some heads to roll, because the end game has to be to keep the orange head from running for office again. You have to put him in a position where he doesn't have the wherewithal to run, and he's stained and he's too dirty for people to touch. But that, even if they do that, unless they say explicitly in the final report that he cannot run for president, they can do that. Then he's going to run again. Because like I said, all he's doing is buying time. Because he knows the end date to this, and he's also banking on 2022, that the midterm elections are flipped and all this stuff will get thrown out. I mean, their goal for the rest of those congressmen who didn't vote for anything, their goal is to impeach Biden and Harris. And
based on what?
Anything.
Based on what? Neither of them have done anything illegal.
To them, they have being elected was being illegal for them. To put Marjorie Greene back on a committee, that's the stuff they're looking forward to. So government is really, excuse the expression, effed up right now. I mean, when you look at it, going back and forth, because nobody wants to take responsibility for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Biden knows. So you go down in history as a president who went after the previous president. But if it all turns out in a positive manner, then you did the right thing.
100%.
And the Supreme Court would back anything you do, because they have to go with the rule of law. In a situation like that, they would have to put on their hats and go by the rule of law. Now, when it comes down to something like Roe versus Wade or something like that, that's a whole different ball game. Mm-hmm. That doesn't deal with the rule of law. Anything that happened right now dealing with this insurrection crap deals with the rule of law. Yeah. And they have to respect that. Because if they go against the rule of law, then why do you need a Supreme Court? You might as well just throw them out.
Why do you need laws?
At
the end of the day, if that's the route you're going to go. And I hope, and I haven't seen a lot about this, or frankly anything, but I want them to go after the elected officials who had meetings with planners of the insurrection, who gave walking tours of the Capitol days before the insurrection. I want them to be held accountable as well. Never hold office again, possible jail time, because that was some traitorous shit right there.
Yeah. And I think in the scheme of things, I think the Democrats know who the congressmen and senators were that gave walking tours. Because you had a congresswoman come out yesterday and make a statement that she did not do anything, a Republican, that she did not do anything wrong, that she didn't give no tours or nothing. So on one side, they're feeling the heat a little bit. But the fire hasn't got turned up hard enough for them to all come out pointing fingers at each other and say, you did this, you did that.
Oh yeah, no, they light a match and blow it out. Mm-hmm. They don't even let them get hot.
Yeah.
And I agree with you about that. It's ridiculous. And I don't even understand why they're bothering anymore to go out and discount or make statements saying that they didn't do something, because they spent the last 4 years manufacturing reality. So Tuesday they could say A, B, and C, and Wednesday they'd be like, I never said A, B, and C. What are you talking about? Fake news. Mm-hmm. You spent the last 4 years doing that. So why now Do you feel, I mean, do you feel the need to go out into the public and say, hey, I wasn't there, I didn't contribute? Unless if, as you say, they're starting to feel the heat. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, with the gerrymandering that's going on in various states, in particular, we talked about Texas last week, Trump just needs to sit back and let that happen. He doesn't have to do anything right now
Oh, yeah, but he's
because
not
they
going to
are
sit back.
planning on stealing the election.
Yeah, because he's working hard at getting the guys who run for Secretary of State next year to be his guys.
Yeah.
And that's what he's banking on. That most states will elect Republican Secretary of States that will support him in anything he wants to get done. I mean, Trump has literally messed up democracy. Okay, democracy is what we once knew it as is no longer. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we are a government that's naked right now. Okay, and when I say that, in a country, China or Russia could push buttons now, and we're such in a disarray. Even though we got a new president and we got new bodies in the defense, the DOD, we could still run some issues and have some problems. Okay, with getting things done and getting things executed like we want to get them executed. He messed up. He messed up the United States. I mean, he just tore the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, I was talking to a Republican today with my colleagues, and we both agreed that there's an underlying tension in this country now because there are so many ignorant people that believe everything that the orange head said, and they are willing to die to get him back in office because there's still a strong belief out there that Biden did not win this race legitimately. So you still have that underlying current. So we still don't know what this country is going to look like 10 years down the road. We just don't. I mean, 5 years, 4 years down the road, we don't know what this country is going to look like. So it's kind of scary to know that we're still sitting on a powder keg that could explode anytime. How do we react to it when it explodes?
Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully, it can last just long enough for us to live the rest of our life in peace and not have to deal with that hot mess. But if Trump were to win another election, the explosion will happen in our lifetime, guaranteed.
Even if he doesn't, it's going to happen because the next election, if he runs again, and they're crazy. Look, you saw what the Republican National Convention was like with him in office. Okay, they had no platform, they had nothing, they just had a show.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can railroad him through again and get him to be president, get him to run for president of the United States again and put him in that position, he's going to open up a little can of worms right away. Because if he loses, that 2024 will be a hell of a year, have a hell of an ending for that year.
Yeah.
Because it's and there are people out there that are willing to die for this food.
I just don't understand. I don't, again, it's all so incredibly short-sighted. It seems like all of his supporters are one, vying for who can be the most sycophantic, and two, at the beginning of the show, I sort of imagined them all as addicted to gambling, because getting in bed with Trump is a gamble. You think you're his best friend today, and he gets busted doing something that's a little off shade. You're the one who's going to get sold up the river. We've seen it happen again and again and again with his advisors.
Yeah.
And the only one who sort of had a awakening was Cohen, when he was like, fuck that. No, I'm talking. I'm writing a book. I'm not having this.
Yeah.
And, he thought that he was going to have that ticket to ride for the rest of his life, living high on the hog. And, he lived well for a while. And then I guess he got a little too close to the fire, got a little too ahead of himself, got busted, and then had to eat all of that crow and realize, this man doesn't have my back. He's not going to get me free, executive order or whatever. And he started singing like a canary. And I'm still waiting to hear all that he has to tell. And Omarosa is another one who claimed to have a lot going on, and we never heard from her again. But these folks are gambling when they get into bed with him, and they think that in the short term, they'll amass a fortune being able to take advantage of the tax programs or tax write-offs that he's giving the wealthy, and you know handouts from the fracking companies and the coal mining companies and all of these companies that he allowed to just dump in the rivers and do whatever, take over national park land to drill for oil or frack or build pipelines or whatever. And so, they had a very fruitful time, monetarily speaking. But that could end like this. And if we continue to fail to hold people accountable, I don't understand what the point is of government. The point is of rule of law. What's the point of the Supreme Court? What's the point of any of it? If the people who are supposed to lead by example don't have to adhere to the laws. If anything, I think that they should be held to a higher standard than we are. Certainly not a lesser. So it drives me nuts to see all of these people still tripping over their feet to suck up to Trump in the hopes that he'll run and win, so that they could make a little bit of gains, which in the long run may serve as generational wealth for their kids if it doesn't all get taken away from them. But it could also end with them in jail.
Yeah. Now, the top, a source of mine tells me that the top 50 Republican money donors in this country, they do not support another orange head run. Okay. But like I told the person, if they don't support another run, why don't they come out and push them off the cliff? Because they have that power to do that. And it just goes back again to them being afraid of losing those votes, or there are people that they support losing votes that would keep them out of office, and you would get more Marjorie Greens in office. So the orange head has fixed it where you have to step away from him and allow crap to happen, because if you don't, your political career is gone.
I'm sorry. I feel like that they should make a new kind of rule where, I don't want to go as far as saying if you don't graduate college, you can't run for election, because you can have very intelligent people who didn't graduate college. But if you don't read books, how can I expect you to read the reports that are crossing your desk and understand the take? Well, some do, like we know AOC does. She reads those things with a fine-tooth comb. And I don't like paying them what they're earning on my tax dollar if they're not doing their job, which includes reading and doing the research. So give them one policy paper and say, read this and give me a summary. And if you can't take it home, you have to do it right now. Read this policy paper and give me a summary and tell me how you would support it or fight it. Let's see an example of critical thinking as a way to say that you are qualified to represent millions of people in your state, not Bobart and Green. And conspiracy theory is not protected. I'm sorry, it may be protected speech, but it's not a religion. And I feel like if you're somebody like Bobblehead and Green who believe in Jewish space lasers and all of this other nonsense, you should be considered certifiable and dropped off at the nearest mental institution and not be allowed to run for office.
Very few of those politicians, both Democrat and Republican, read to understand, because they have people working for them that do those reports for them and hand them to them and give them the sound bites of an issue that they need to know. Why do we have clerks of the court? We have them because they do the work for the judges. Okay.
And I get that, and I respect that. Again, I did some of those papers.
It's the same thing for politicians.
Yeah.
They just regurgitate the little bit of information that's given to them by their aides.
Right, but they have to understand enough of what their aides are putting together for them, because you're going to get that curveball during the press conference. You're going to get that curveball during the interview. You've got to have an understanding, or shut your mouth. Go
back now. Look at both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. There's a reason you have a few high-profile Democrats and Republicans that do all the talking, And that's why you have the other 95% of Democrats and Republicans that just sit there all day long and do nothing.
Yeah. No, no,
Okay,
I hear you.
that's the
I do.
reason. You take the top 5%, what you might consider the smartest Democrats or the smartest Republicans, and those are the talking heads.
Hmm.
Okay, the rest of them are followers that just follow behind them. You take that big mouth Margie Green. Okay, she doesn't have no committee. She doesn't have nothing to do, but yet she's there earning $170,000 a year to do nothing.
A high school
Doesn't
dropout earning
Yeah, doesn't influence.
175,000, representing millions of people
Yeah,
and doing nothing but spouting conspiracy theories.
doesn't influence nothing in this country.
Mm-mm.
If I bet she can't even start with the letter M and go backwards in the alphabet. She probably can't even start with the letter G and go backwards in the alphabet. But the people who are probably on the, and I hate to say this, on the same intellectual level that she is on in her district elected her. So you can't blame the politicians. You got to blame the people who sit there and are foolish enough to elect them, knowing that they don't have the brains to do anything.
Well, I hesitate to truly disparage the people in her constituency base simply because I don't know what they knew. Now, we do know that they didn't get off their ass and do their, well, I suspect they either didn't get off their ass to do the research on her to figure out whether she was qualified or not, or they're dumb as a bag of rocks, as you suggest. But again, takes us back to something we've said a million times, that the dumbing down of this country is one of the most successful programs ever instituted here. And the last 4 to 6 years are evidence of that, with the whole anti-intellectualism
Mm-hmm.
and anti-science, and people treating science as if it in itself as a form of religion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy.
What I can't get into, and it's happening here in this area now in Loudoun County, how parents can get so perturbed with the Board of Education that they look stupid themselves going against the Board of Education. Then what bothers me too is all these other parents around the country that are walking the library and find a book that they want taken out. Okay, if you don't like the book,
Don't
allow
read it.
don't allow your child to read the book. But don't take the opportunity away from thousands of kids to read a book because you don't want your child to read a book.
Please, half those people don't even read.
Yeah.
Don't get me started.
And that's what's crazy about this whole society, this world we live in now.
Yeah, no, they don't have a problem with Huckleberry Finn referring to characters as nigger.
Yeah.
And that is a classic, and I understand
Mhm.
the time that it was written, and I think it's an important book for people to read. But if we're not asking for those types of books to be to be taken down, then sit down,
Mhm.
shut up.
But you have and you don't see many black parents. Well, I hardly see any black parents ever going to the school board and say, "Take this book out or remove this book." What you see are high school level white parents walking to the library, all of a sudden, or the kid brings a book home that they're reading. All of a sudden, they just thumb through and they see one word.
Yeah.
And they don't want the kid to read the book.
Yeah.
It's and like you're right, we are dumbing down the nation when it comes to education.
If Mein Kampf can be in a school library, and
Mhm.
half the books that they have a problem with should be allowed to be in the library. I mean,
Yeah.
I was trying to think to myself, are there any books that I would want excluded from a library? And there's a part of me that wants to say yes, like the bell curve that was put out by the Manhattan Institute. I forget who their author was, but basically made an argument that's saying that people of color are intellectually inferior and not capable
Mhm.
of, the academic achievements you see in white America. And it was absolute racist bullshit. And I read part of it, I couldn't finish it. But do I want to deny other people the opportunity to read it? No, simply because I want them to know that this type of bullshit exists.
Yeah. Because
Or there was another, these conspiracy theories, but like there's already a book that was published against one saying that COVID-19 is a hoax, and then writing about the vaccine and how it's bad for you. Meanwhile, the person who wrote the book has a BA. That's it, not a PhD, not a master's degree, just some failed person who got a BA and didn't go any further in their career and believes in conspiracy theories and published this book, which will likely make millions of dollars for him because we know there's 70 million Americans in this country who are inclined to believe that nonsense. So there should be a section in the library called misinformation and racism and sexism or something like that, a snapshot in time of stupidity. And then people can read it from that perspective to know it's not gospel. The only books that I would not want people to have to read are some of the current history books that are being generated that refer to slaves as immigrant workers who are happy to be there and happy with their lot, and then gloss over all of African American history. Those are books that don't need to exist.
Well, they don't give us credit for anything now, So I mean, it's not even the book. It's just not even put into the books that the students use in the schools now. They might make a brief paragraph mention of Black history, and that's it. They found a good portion of Black history, and that's all they do. I made sure that my kids knew about Black history because I taught it to them. Because they're not getting into the schools, and that's one of the things we don't do in our community. We don't celebrate Black History Month, even though it's only 28 days. They gave us the shortest month of the year, but we don't celebrate Black history throughout the year. If you ask a student now who was Huey Newton, they wouldn't even know who Huey Newton was.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Black History Month this year with the whole anti-CRT movement, and with so many teachers being denied the ability to teach Black authors or even bring up any subject that references Black or race or racism.
That's why you have to teach it in your home, okay? You have to teach it in your churches. At our church, we celebrate Black History Month. Every Sunday we have a program, and that's what we do. We celebrate Black History Month. Again, I taught my kids Black history. You have to take it upon yourselves to do it because the school system, even the blackest of the school system, even in New York City, they're not going to teach. And New York City is a pretty liberal city. They're not going to teach the history that our kids need to know.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have the time, first of all, but they teach the parts that you can find anytime, anywhere. We need to teach. You need to go in depth to Black history, and you need to teach the real Black history that needs to be taught.
But what the thing is about your comment with respect to time, there is time. It's a part of history. It's not a separate history. It's a part of American history. And I remember in college being very resentful that African American studies was taught in an entire separate department from the history department. So that couldn't be used towards credit towards my history degree.
Right.
It's like, this is freaking ridiculous. I mean, the fact is, we are entrenched in every aspect of American history from start to finish. And if they taught it consecutively, there would be time. But they spend more time teaching us about, American myths like George Washington chopping down a cherry tree instead of the actual facts. They spend more time telling us Thomas Edison invented light bulb instead of the facts of the Black guy who did invent it. So there is time. They just need to get rid of the lies. We don't need to learn about Columbus as the discoverer of America because we know factually that that's simply not true. So we can teach about him as an explorer. We know he was that. We can teach about him as an imperialist. We know he was that. And then instead of drilling this nonsense into our heads about all of these American propaganda myths, teach us the real history. So I would argue that there is time. And they teach you same history every grade. They just give you a little bit more. So instead of teaching me the same history between elementary school and high school, let's progress as they do in Germany.
Unless you go out and design a history book and write a history book that all board of educations in this country is going to buy and give it to their students, it ain't going to happen. Okay.
We know that. Yeah.
The reason African American Studies was a separate department was because we fought for that. That's what we fought for that. Okay.
Mhm.
You know, it wasn't even taught in the history departments of black universities. It was an African American history department. You could get a degree in African American history. You know, so our history and has been uh, torn apart, and we don't have the people that can put it back together. That's why I say it's up to us to teach our kids, to have community gatherings where we just teach Black history, because
Yeah.
the white community isn't going to teach it. They right now fighting against critical race theory. If they really look at it and read the book on critical race theory, they'll find it's not harmful. It's just telling the truth. But they don't want to accept that their ancestors, and that's all we're talking about. We're not saying that you in 2021 have done this. You might be a little racist still, but we just speaking facts, okay?
Yeah.
Your great great granddaddy was a jerk, okay?
Not even that far back. It
You
could be
know,
their grandparents,
yeah,
But no one wants to hear that me ma sat at a picnic under a tree with somebody hanging.
yeah.
Nobody wants to know about that.
Because they feel like, why are we making our white kids feel bad about the past? You
Why
know,
do we
why should
teach
we
about World
shame
War
them?
II? Why
Yeah,
do we teach about the Holocaust?
yeah.
But
Well, a lot of them don't even believe the Holocaust took place.
I know it's just so sad. But
You know.
we have another 15 minutes left to the show, and it seems like that we're going in the right direction. So, in keeping with the notion of misinformation and rewriting history, um, what are your thoughts on the whistleblower, Francis Hugan, the former employee at Facebook?
I think she just skimmed the top. I don't think she had her ducks in a row. I think, this is just me speaking. I think she was an employee that was disgruntled to a certain extent. She probably did see things that probably wasn't kosher, but she wasn't at the level to make to push decisions to be made to make changes. Okay,
But
now
go ahead.
look, we all know. I mean, we're pretty smart individuals. We all know that Zuckerberg and his crew pushed items on Facebook to make the hairs on the people's bodies stand up, and make them go deeper and deeper and read more. Okay, and it is the algorithm is designed to, if you can get people riled up or get people stuck on a certain topic and let them keep researching it and talking about it, then the advertising dollars are going to pop up. Okay, you know. Uh, was it dangerous? Yeah, it was to a certain extent, because most of these ignorant people that support the orange head supported him because they were reading this crazy stuff on Facebook.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, then whether or not he was doing, yeah, he was doing it to make money. Okay, the bottom line is it was all about making more money, more money, more money.
He stole it from his friends.
Yeah,
He finally got the girl. He's living high on
hmm,
the hog. Like, you've got enough already. Just stop.
yeah,
But just to give people a little bit of background, she was recruited by Facebook in 2019, and she's worked for companies like Google and Pinterest. And she was a data scientist with a degree in computer engineering and a Harvard's master degree in business. So she's not just some, little disgruntled clerk. On top of that, when she accepted the position, I think it was with the understanding that she was going to work in an area that would help address issues of miscommunication and fake news. And so they had created a department, a civic department, I don't remember the actual name of it, that was specifically hired to supposedly address this issue. And what she found was that they weren't even addressing 0.56 billions of 1/10 of 1% of the issue. They weren't even scratching the surface, and that even the internal research performed by the mucky mucks at at Facebook, determined that they weren't doing anything to seriously combat the fake profiles, the fake information coming in from the Ukraine and Russia, the fake news being propagated by Breitbart and these other OAnon and all of these other stupid fake news sites, Fox. And she saw conflicts of interest between what was best for the public and what Facebook was saying publicly, and what was best for Facebook and what Facebook was doing behind closed doors.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, the thing is, Facebook 10 years from now won't even be the Facebook we see now, because I think they're going to lose a lot of customers. And yeah, they are going to lose a lot of customers, because I didn't like the statement he made yesterday, Zuckerberg, is saying that their new uh, their new customer is a younger customer. They're trying to move away from people of my age and move into the younger things. But he doesn't realize there are companies out there that are doing the same thing he's doing there and doing a better job of. I have a young man, a young black man in Detroit, uh, has a company, Live Technology, that's doing the same thing that Facebook is doing. The only problem he's in the process now, he has to build his numbers, okay? And it takes a while to get people off of one platform and get them interested into moving into another platform. But he has the
yeah.
same platform, and his platform is really even better than Facebook, okay? Then I interviewed a guy last night on my show, Aqua Technology, who's doing the same thing in a different way. Okay, so there are companies out there now that have developed the program, the platforms that they can go up against Facebook. They just got to build the numbers and build the body.
Yeah, I know TikTok is really taking off. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, Facebook will go in the same direction that MySpace went, which back in the day I thought I avoided like the plague, because to
Mhm.
me, it might as well have just been an online menu for perverts and pedophiles, because you had very young people signing up. Pardon, I'm in New York, so you're going to hear it. Um, and Facebook was fun for a little while until it was politicized. And once that happened, much like yelling a carnival
Mhm.
bark or yelling fake news, destroying the news, whether good
Mhm.
or bad, the politicization of the platform on Facebook destroyed the fun that it was for most of us.
Mhm.
And what I like about TikTok is, one, it's more entertaining. And I haven't seen an excessive amount of politics yet. I
Mhm.
don't know if it's an algorithm thing or what. But for the time being, that has been my escape route from Facebook.
Mhm.
I go onto Facebook for real world news and to repost things related to news or politics.
Mhm.
Occasionally, you might see a cat, but it's just I don't get the same benefit from it. And I can
Right.
see why they want to appeal to the younger generation. But if they don't buy TikTok or some technology like that, they're going to lose the younger generation, because TikTok is
Mhm.
monetized. So
Yeah.
you've got people who are making bank,
Mhm.
becoming, having hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers.
Yeah. And see, TikTok is designed for short bursts of information or entertainment. Okay, you can't do anything. You can't do real world news on TikTok. Okay, it doesn't allow you to get that much time. So everything is designed for like a minute or two, and that's
You
all.
can get up to 3 minutes. And I have thought to
Won't
myself
be.
that, well, no, but we could market real world news on TikTok. We can put a good 3 minute snippet and then a link to the show.
Yeah,
And I've
but
thought about that, but I don't have the time.
yeah, like I said, if I could pull my friends that I have on Facebook now and pull them over to Live Way Technology, you could start. If we could pull people to new platforms, it would work. I
Yeah.
mean, because even the guy who had Parlor until he till he sold his soul to the devil, he had a good thing going on, but he sold his soul to the devil, and you see what happened.
Hmm.
He got destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah.
All for money.
Yeah. I actually tried downloading Parler a while ago, but they wanted too much personal information. I didn't
Hmm.
feel comfortable giving that to them.
Yeah,
And
so.
I've tried to check out a couple of the other sites just to see what the right is doing,
Hmm.
because after getting busted on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram after the insurrection, they're all looking for a new place after Parler
Yeah.
folded. So I was trying to find what that place is, but they're
Mhm.
they're holding it tight to the vest.
Well, Orangehead has a new media company that he wants to use, but then that got hacked before it could even go live. People got in and hacked and put in the names that they want to use. They were already using what the vice president's name and using his name already. So he couldn't use his own name on his own site because somebody had already claimed the name and everything.
Yeah.
So you can do the stuff. You just got to know how to do it and be more secure.
And have the time and the interest and the inclination. And I am so over the watermark with all things Trump related. It's as unhappy as I am with things right now. I'm happier than I was when Trump was president because I had to wonder every day, is this the day that he pushes us straight over the edge into pure fascism? Is this the day that Korea decides they want to test their bombs out on New York City? What's going to happen? Is this the day? Because remember, when you had, I don't remember if it was the Proud Boys or some local, quote, militia that had run into was it the Missouri government building? And I had said back then, this is a trial run. And I was right because they did it 2 more times before the insurrection. And my thought was if Trump had won, or was able to get himself back into office after the insurrection, there would be no holding these folks back because all of it is seen as permissible.
So I mean, it's a mess out there. It's a mess, and he's created it. But I think in time people are going to turn. When you look at the January 6th situation, people are going to turn. But the person that you need to get, we're just never going to get. Just never going to get. Because he's going to pull that presidential curtain down over top of him, and that's what he's going to use as his shield. But history, and I think he realizes this: history is not going to be kind to him unless he writes the history book himself.
Yeah, well, he doesn't care because if he does get back into power, then he does have the ability to do that. Next thing you know, we'll be book burning, and we'll be in a Orwellian dystopian book.
He's not going to get back because 80 million people are going to make sure he doesn't get back in office. That's the thing.
Let's hope. We need to be fruitful and multiply so that we can just overrun the 70 million wackos that
we will. We will. Because people don't want to go through that mess again. People don't want to go through that mess, And in time, like I said, it's going to take a while. In time, those knuckleheads that feel a need to burn down every state capital, they're going to go away. Or they're going to get bored. They're going to go on to find something else to do.
Well, unfortunately, as we've seen, these folks are very adept at teaching the next generation their hate and their hypocrisy and their ignorance. So I don't know how long it's going to take.
You take a person of that type, an intellectual nuthead that doesn't have much going on in their life for them, working a minimum wage job. This empowers them. They feel like they're doing something. They really feel like they're doing something, following somebody who's been bankrupt. Every time you turn around, he's lost businesses to bankruptcy, or he's cheated people out of their money, hasn't paid his bills. They feel like they're smart enough, and that gives them a little power, a little thump, gives them an opportunity to push that chest out. When they follow somebody like that, where they can use their ideas and spread their ideas around the world that are not even worth crap, worth being written on toilet tissue, so that's how they survive, that's how they survive because they think they really are better than that neighbor, they really think that.
Yeah, well, they needed something, and I guess this gave it to them.
Yeah.
We have 5 more minutes, so I just wanted to raise one little factoid that I found last week. As you may recall, after the 2020 election, the Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick announced that he was offering $1 million reward paid from his campaign account to anybody who can come forward and report voter fraud that would result in some actionable, something or other. Nearly a year later, Patrick, a Republican, has paid out his first reward, $25,000, to a Democrat in Pennsylvania who reported a man for voting twice. He received the minimum reward because we're looking for bigger fish. So he promised $1 million to incentivize this, only got evidence of a Republican double dipping, and then only gave out 25,000 because they're looking for bigger fish. I thought that was kind of funny.
But look, did you hear about the guy who said it was voter fraud because somebody uses his wife's name, used his wife's name twice to vote? His wife is dead. Well, come to find out that the person who was using the wife's name was him. So he's a Republican who, I think he might have been Texas, but he's gotten convicted of voter fraud.
It just amazes me that these folks who know they're wrong will stand on the highest pedestal and scream out with righteous indignation, but they know they're wrong and they swear they're not going to get caught.
And that's the problem. They don't think they're going to get caught, but they always get caught.
Not always, not often enough.
Yeah, but it's not that much voter fraud going on. The orange head again made that one of it. You know, I really thought when they went to Arizona, I said, yeah, these mugs gonna go out in Arizona and they're gonna come out and tell a lie. These guys actually came out and told the truth. I mean, because they said they found 300 extra votes for Biden.
Yeah.
You know, so it really surprised me because the group of people he put together were a bunch of knuckleheads.
How were they extra?
Huh?
How were they extra votes?
Well, you know, so you go back, they hand counted everything, you know, and so
you mean they found votes that hadn't been counted?
Yeah.
Okay.
So so they went back and did a hand count, you know, so the hand count gave Biden 300 more votes. So Orangehead got mad. So then Orangehead goes to Georgia and tells them they should recount Fulton County, a black county, you know, predominantly black county, you know. So look, it's almost a year now that Biden has been in office. Just let it go.
Yeah.
Just let it go. But he can't even let it go. He keeps pushing that. That's all you hear. At his little campaign rallies, that's all you hear. That's the first thing they say he talks about.
You know what would be the icing on the cake? His grandfather was basically kicked out of Germany in disgrace, wasn't allowed back. The icing on the cake would be if his descendant, Trump, and hopefully by extension his family, were found guilty of traitorous actions against the country, grift and fraud and all of that, and kicked out of the country. That would be the best thing. We don't need Trumps. We don't need Trumps here.
We know
maybe Mary can stay. Mary can get an invite to the cookout, but the rest of them can go.
They can take Omarosa with them too. You know. She sold her soul, and then she got kicked out the door.
Yeah.
You know.
So, well, you know, I don't think we've heard the last of her, so we will see. But
she's been on TV the last couple of weeks, peddling her book.
So she did write it. All right.
Yeah.
So we have less than a minute left. So I'm being flagged by our producer to say that tomorrow night's show on Hot Topics Talk Radio TV is going to be What is a Date and Have the Rules Changed? And for anybody who watched last week's show and the week before that, this is sort of a continuation of that ongoing dialogue. It was very entertaining and a little salacious. So I would suggest that you chime in and join the show. All right, Reggie, I guess I'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll be around.
All right, then. Everybody be well, be safe, get vaccinated, vote, and pay attention. All right, so let's sum it up. Good night, everyone.
Good night.